look into the endurance world. All right, so I'm going to start with looking at a program called Zwift. And Zwift and Rouvy are programs that interact with the biker who is training indoors. And I'm going to take another video of someone actually using Zwift, and you need to have what's called a smart trainer, and that smart trainer adjusts resistance and it communicates with the computer, and then as you run this program, the program will adjust the resistance based upon whether or not you're simulating going uphill. The resistance will increase, or if you're behind someone, another rider, the resistance will decrease because of drafting or even going downhill. All right. So Zwift is a very popular program. You can also form groups. That is, you can get together with other people virtually. You're not together physically, and you can do group rides, which is fun. You can also participate in races and events that are more competitive in nature. And you have virtual bike races. Ultimately, there's going to be some virtual triathlons, but that's coming through the pipeline. All right, so that's Zwift. I'm going to close that out. The other indoor cycling program that's very common to use is Rouvy. What's unique about Rouvy is it's actually using video, and then it puts an avatar on that video that represents the person using the program. So here you can see in this short clip here that those are avatars, those aren't actual riders, but the video is real. So in this way you get a better sense of what the course looks like. So what a lot of cyclists will do is they will practice riding a course that they're going to compete on. So if you know you're going to be doing Ironman Lake Placid, you can download the video of the course and then practice that course. And again, just like Zwift, this program will communicate with your smart trainer and adjust the resistance based upon whether you're going uphill, downhill, or what have you. All right, so that's a pretty neat program as well. So those are user programs to exercise in. Now what I want to do is go through some programs that would be used to analyze your data, or in essence they're electronic training logs. So they keep track of what you do in exercising. In order to use these programs, you need some type of GPS device. So for example, I use a Garmin watch. There's other GPS devices, Polar, Sunoto, all different types of GPS watches out there. You would record your exercise on the watch and then download or upload the data to these different platforms. In this case, I use Garmin, so Garmin Connect is the main interface to use with this device. And as you can see here, it keeps track of all the different exercises that I've done or used the watch for during exercise. And you can look at all the activities. You can sort based upon which activity you might be interested in. Maybe I just want to look at the cycling data, maybe just the swim data, or something where you do more than one sport, in this case a triathlon, so some type of multi-sport. And they have other activities as well that you can keep track of. But when you have some data, you can also analyze those data by clicking on the activity, and then it will allow you to look at the different metrics or measurements the watch has used to analyze or to gauge the intensity or the time of doing the exercise. So this is a ride I did this morning, just riding down towards Lake Las Vegas. So it's a nice little map feature. And so here's Las Vegas here, Lake Las Vegas, and then Lake Mead is right here. So here it's kept track of my elevation. All right, I may want to train a particular type of elevation profile. If I'm prepping for a race, I would look at the elevation profile of that race, and then maybe I'd find a local course that sort of simulates that elevation profile. so I can get used to the type of hills to climb. It kept track of my speed, very simple metric from the GPS data. All right, you see the speed varies over time and gives me an average speed. I did wear a heart rate monitor, so it kept track of my heart rate. Heart rate's not very high. This was just sort of a fun ride today. May have pushed a little bit right here, a little bit harder, but I could actually analyze my heart rate over time. Here's bike cadence, and you can see these dips here. That would have been a stoplight or a stop sign or something. Maybe I'm going downhill and coasting, but in general, I'm able to keep track of my cadence, and there's my average cadence over the entire ride. My bike does have a power meter on it, so now I can analyze how much power I'm generating during the ride. 185 watts, it's not very intense. 95 watts, again, this is going to vary based upon how hard I'm trying. Here it's 0, I'm either coasting or stopped at a stoplight. The higher this number, the more intense, and the faster I'm trying to convert chemical energy to mechanical energy. Sustaining 218 watts, that's pretty good. 224, that's a good little intensity right here. I was working a little bit harder. And then down here is sort of a summary of the ride. So it gives a distance, amount of calories used. Here Garmin tries to keep track of a training effect, and it gives a number based upon whether it provides an aerobic benefit or maybe an anaerobic benefit. Really no anaerobic benefit, that I wasn't doing that. It's just an easy sustained ride for today. And keeps track of heart rate, and it can give it heart rate in beats per minute or percent of max based upon a threshold or some max heart rate that I entered. And it can even keep track of your heart rate in different zones, which is important when you're trying to build a training program. And you can also look at your power in terms of the numbers here. Average power, the max power generated, that would have been coming out of a stop position to reaching some velocity, because you can't sustain that very long. 196 watts on average for a 20-minute window, which is a good metric for that cyclists use, how long you can sustain a wattage over 20 minutes. Normalized power, this is just a little bit different than average power. What it does is it involves squaring the power data and then taking the average of those squared power. So you actually emphasize the bigger numbers more and you de-emphasize smaller numbers. So you often hear cyclists talk about normalized power versus average power. If I sustain the exact same power for an entire course, these two numbers would be the same. But if I'm changing my power over a ride, then these two numbers actually differentiate from each other quite a bit. Intensity factor, this is just an algorithm to give a sense of how hard the exercise felt. Obviously this goes up, that's going to be a higher intensity factor, and you may want to monitor that over a training program. A training stress score, we're going to see this in some other programs. This is just a way to rate how hard the exercise was. 82.5 is a reasonably good training stress score. That means that's a good stress placed on the system. And if you're designing a training program, you have to monitor this and make sure that you're ultimately avoiding an overtraining perspective. FTP, functional threshold power, that is the power that a cyclist can sustain for 1 hour. And my FTP is 273. That's actually entered. I would have to adjust that if my training level changes. And then just some times here. So it has total time 143, moving time 142.05. The difference of that is stopping at a stoplight, stop sign, what have you. Average speed, average moving speed, max speed reached. These are just good metrics to look at. Elevation as well, in terms of the amount of climbing or descending that you have. So lots of metrics in here. Most of the time when I look at these, I'm looking at heart rate, I'm looking at power, and trying to get a good sense of how heart rate and power are linked, so that if I have to use one or the other, I can understand what's going on physiologically as well as mechanically. Okay, Garmin Connect has a lot of other features in it. This is a great program to explore. You can do all sorts of of analyses of health status. So let's see, health stats here. So you can look at your sleep. It's reasonably good, or at least it gives you a sense. I didn't sleep 10 hours last night, but that there was a period of time that it thought I was sleeping. You can keep track of your weight. I actually don't use it for this, or your hydration status. I don't use it for that either. And there's also ways to track your fitness. It will calculate an estimated VO2 max for you. This is not measured. It's some algorithm that they're using. 47, that seems a little low, but that's for running. And then I can look at cycling. Really, to do a good measure of VO2 max, we got to go into the lab and do a VO2 max test. But these are not bad indicators of overall fitness. And I do look at these over time, so you can look at what's happening over a 6-month period, or maybe a year, and you can start to see if your fitness is going up, or had some bump here, fitness is going down, what have you. So Garmin Connect is a pretty powerful program. It's free. There's no membership with it, and it comes with the device. You activate an account once you have a particular device. Okay, the next one I wanted to look at is Strava. I think I've shown some of this in class already. Strava is a way that you can upload your data. In this case, I did a run this morning, just a little over 3 miles. It took me 25 minutes, and then you can. I'll give him a thumbs up on the ride. Here's a friend that did run this morning. You can give a ride. You can also write a comment for the person. And here I'm gonna maybe edit this activity. This was actually a swim run, so you can edit some of these entries. You can't edit all of them. They won't let you change things like distance or what have you. Otherwise, people would be putting in fictitious training routines. I'm not seeing my edit button. I'm losing it. Oh, here it is. So in this case, I used a swim ergometer. So I'm going to just change that swim ergometer. And I'm going to call that a swim, not a just a general workout. And the advantage of doing that is that will actually keep track of all my swims that I've done. And what's neat about this routine, or this program, is you can look and see who else is exercising around you. So let's see if I can find one that might have some people on the ride. Let's see if this one had anyone near me. I can look at this. I can do flybys. This is really more just sort of a fun feature of this program, where we'll let you see who else was doing the ride with you, and you can see where you moved with them, or you can see other people that you came across. So here, let's see, I took a bike ride with my wife this day. So she's on, I put some other people on, and each of their paths will show up on this map. So here's some different people riding over here. And then I'll just play it. And now it keeps track of where I am, where these other riders are. And it's sort of neat how you can sort of see where other riders, what other routes they're doing. I've often picked up new routes to try out using this type of program. So here's some people going down to Lake Las Vegas. They were ahead of us, but at some point we crossed paths with them. So it's sort of a fun feature. So Strava I look at as a Facebook for endurance community. All right, it keeps track of elevation as well. You can also do some analyses in here. Strava also keeps track of different segments. and how fast you completed a particular segment, and it will rate you based upon how other people have ridden in that segment. So here someone did this segment right here, which is this part of the map here, in 1 minute and 10 seconds. I'm 141. I haven't really paid attention to it, so maybe I need to come back and I need to try to do this segment faster next time. I think I can go 110 for this segment. Yeah, so that becomes a motivator for an athlete or me or anyone else to compare how you're doing against other people. We've also done races on Strava where you don't actually race with each other, but you go and do a particular route that you build, and you try to see how fast you can do it, and then the data are uploaded and compared to each other. So a virtual way to do it. I'm going to also look at power data here in Strava, very similar to what Garmin will have. Here it's presented a little bit differently. This is power over here, and this is time that power value was reached. So here, this looks to be about for 45 minutes, I was able to sustain about 142 watts on this ride, all right, which is about right. The longer you go, the lower your power number. But back here, I'm looking at generating 490 watts, but that was only sustained for just over 5 seconds. Again, that makes sense. Higher power, higher intensity, shorter duration. So this is just another way to look at power. And what you use these data for, and you can see this sort of overlay of other data, this is a lot of rides put together, is you start to use that type of power curve to try to understand, well, what's the highest power that you can sustain for a period of time? And you start to look for this break point right here where the power versus time data are one slope here, and then here it's much steeper slope. And you say, okay, that's about 258 watts. That means that I should be able to sustain that wattage for a long period of time. And then I start using this to plan out a race. Okay, so that's Strava. Next one, TrainingPeaks. This is a very powerful program. This is TrainingPeaks. It's a very powerful program to use individually, but also for coaches to work with athletes, where a coach can actually enter a daily program for each athlete, and the athlete then completes that workout based upon how the coach entered it. And this is all electronic, so the coach will work with multiple athletes and enter their routines. Those routines are sent out to each athlete and then uploaded into their TrainingPeaks account. Lots of different metrics in this program. It's really powerful. And I should mention, each of these programs I've shown have a free version, and then there's a paid version. The paid version just increases the amount of analysis possible for that routine. The free programs are great ways to start out, and then people can decide whether or not they want to do a paid version. And I would, if you're starting out, I would just stay with the free account. I would only go to a paid account if I'm actually coaching an athlete to be able to interact with different athletes, or if I'm really heavy into the metrics and I want to get a deep dive on the metrics, then I'd have to go to the next level of the free program. But the free program works pretty well for just about all these. All right, so here's what I did today. Did some cycling, did some running, and then swam on a dry land ergometer. So different information that we have here on this home page. This is just a quick snapshot of my fitness. And you can see the fitness was going up here, and now it starts to go down a little bit. I've just been trying to sustain fitness over this last couple of weeks. And then this dotted line, if I stopped exercising today, my fitness would degrade over time until, in this case, this would have been to Hawaii 70.3, which has been postponed, so I'm not going to be doing that event at this date, but my fitness would degrade at a particular rate, and I can use that to give a sense for building a taper to taper and prep for a particular race. Here I have some races entered, and you can keep track of these events, and then it will tell you how far you have to your event. sort of give you a snapshot of your fitness prepping for that event. On this side, I've got my fatigue level, my fitness level, and form level. I'm not going to go into detail on these numbers, but these numbers are used by an athlete to get a good sense of where they are at any particular time in their fitness, as well as how tired they may be, or how close to overtraining they may be getting. And so you try to manage these three numbers, and these three numbers are influenced by how much volume of exercise you've done, what intensity you've done those exercises, and how frequently you're doing these exercises. Those three things, frequency, intensity, time, which you've learned in exercise physiology for prescription, are manifested themselves into these three numbers. They're not individually; they're used and combined, and these numbers are just related mathematically. But I often monitor this number or have a target number I know I want to try to get to for an event, and I build my training program in a way to approach that target number for that event. And then these graphs are just ways to look at those three numbers over different periods of time. So 7 days, 28 days, 98 days, or 90 days in a year. And you can see here, this year sort of represents a build for a race here. Then I did a race, and then I took some time off, and then doing another build for another race. And then here I am at this point where I don't have any race coming up. Some other things to look at in this routine are some training zones. Now, this routine manages and quantifies how much time you've spent in different power thresholds or power regions, or in heart rate regions, or in pace regions. And you analyze your workouts and you analyze your program based upon how much time you're spending in these. And in general, a good training program, you want to be really about 80% of your time in a very low level of power, 20% of your time up in a higher range of power, and same for heart rate when you're training for an endurance event. And so you try to manage that type of intensity. You can't go hard all the time, nor should you be going too slow all the time. And this is just a nice way to sort of keep track of that. Just going to the calendar button. This is just a way to look at what you've done over time. And it gives you some summary information. This is just a dashboard, just more graphs. This graph looks pretty horrendous, but you can change what's plotted on it. But if I look at any period in time, you can see that date, 11/1/2019. I can read my training stress score, which is a way to quantify how hard that exercise was. I can look at the intensity factor of that exercise. I can look at the fatigue, fitness, and form. And again, these are a function of how hard the exercise session was on that day, as well as maybe 7 days prior, or maybe even 40 days prior. And so you start looking at your intensity, frequency, and time over a longer period of time to try to get a sense for how much fitness you have and how to avoid overtraining. Again, just some different graphs to look at some different metrics, and then some fitness history, looking at training stress score and different time periods of windows that you're looking at. Again, very sophisticated device program to analyze any particular ride as well as a training program overall. ATP is annual training program. I don't actually use this, but this is something that can be very useful for setting up an 8-week training program in prep for a race, or a 12-week or 20-week, whatever it is, even a year. You can actually download these programs, these training programs, put them in your profile, and then every day that you wake up, you look at what you're supposed to be doing, and it's all laid out right there. And then the program will keep track of whether or not you've hit the workouts that you were planning on hitting. So it's really a neat way to, one, set up something for yourself, or if you're coaching someone, it's a nice way to set up a training program and then monitor that athlete from a distance or remotely. Okay, so that's most of what I want to show you in TrainingPeaks. And now the last program I'm going to talk about is really related to biomechanics, and this is a really powerful program to try to get a sense of how fast you can ride a particular course. So that's why it's called Best Bike Splits. It's pretty sophisticated math behind it. And let me walk you through this a little bit. I mostly want to get to some of the modeling that they have. So here are just some different races that I've participated in. In some cases, I used these to predict my race time, or maybe predict a race strategy in terms of how hard I should try in a particular point in the race. And so let's look at Ironman St. George. This is a 70.3. This is a half Ironman up in St. George, Utah. It's bringing up the data. It gives a race overview. And these would have been actual data from a race. So this is analyzed in real time, or it's going to be real data. Here's the course down here. And what's really neat, lots of neat things about this program, but look at this little figure right here. If I start looking at a particular point in the race, it's actually going to give me the historical wind direction data that course has had. And so they're relying on weather data in terms of creating this type of profile. So now I'm looking at that point in the race that I just clicked on, and you can see where my bike is down here. That would be a tailwind. But if I go in another place, that's a crosswind. And here, this is historically a headwind hitting the course right at this point. Those are things that, as an athlete and a competitor, I may want to think about going in, so I can start to expect what direction the wind may be hitting me at a particular point in the race. And here it's got power data. This is, again, a very common metric to have for cyclists. So you can look at the different power. So let's see if I can just stop it here. At this point, at 11.5 miles into the course, I was using about 196 watts and going about 25 miles per hour into a headwind. All right, I can keep looking at how that worked overall. And then there's all these different metrics. Here's that training stress score again. Watts per kilogram. This is powers normalized to my body mass. And that can be something to keep track of. Here's yaw angle. This represents the direction of the wind that's happening on the rider. And then here's our CDA. And we've talked quite a bit about CDA. This is actually two parameters: coefficient of drag and frontal area. As I've mentioned in class several times, we typically combine those two numbers, and combine those two numbers equal this number, 0.2395. That's mathematically calculated based upon the analysis of these data. Here's CRR. This is our coefficient of rolling resistance, and we've talked about rolling resistance as a resistance force during cycling. This is a very typical rolling resistance number. And this is something that we can control based upon tire selection and tire pressure and even wheel selection. All right, so that's all just sort of neat metrics. Here's what's really cool about this program is you can start to analyze different aspects of your race to see how to go faster. So let's see, here's my time, 2:34 for 56.24 miles. Well, what if I get a better helmet? Or what if I get better clothing, or maybe a different frame, or I change my bike position so that CDA goes down? Remember, the lower this number, the better. Well, I can change that here in this program. I'm going to drop it to maybe 225. What does that mean? That just means lower resistance due to drag force. Right, so it adjusts that. And it keeps everything else the same. It keeps your power that you sustain for the race the same. It keeps your weight the same, and your rolling resistance the same. And look at that. By changing my CDA from what it was before, I lost track, to what it is now, so 6% improvement, I gained 2 minutes over this entire course. So now my adjusted time would be 2:32. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, I just cut 2 minutes off by either having a better aero helmet, better clothing, or better position to reduce that CDA. Now maybe I would train a little better, and I can, instead of sustaining 214 watts, maybe I want to hit this race the next time and sustain a little bit higher wattage. I can bring that up. And now look, my time goes down to 230. If I sustain just 4 watts more, 4 watts is not a lot. So I dropped another, that's total gain. I dropped another 2 minutes. If I go back over here, drop this back to 0. Oops. If I go in the wrong direction, it's going to increase my time. Trying to get to 0 here. There's 0. So now by increasing my power from 214 to 220 watts, I save 2 minutes. That's almost the same 2 minutes, as dropping the drag. Keep hitting it. Oh, okay, there we go. 2 minutes and 25 seconds by increasing my wattage from 214 to 220. That increase is going to come from training. So I can train better and get 2 minutes, or I can maybe get a better aero helmet, a better bike position, better bike, and I can drop that and sustain the same wattage. These are decisions that athletes need to make. So let me go back to no change in power. And I said, well, maybe I need to stop eating those donuts or the chocolate bars or the brownies, and maybe I need to drop a little weight. I'm going to get back to 0 here. There. Okay. Maybe I need to drop a little, maybe I gain a little bit of weight. Look what happens if I gain weight. My adjusted time gets slower. So now I'm going slower over the course, and I'm having a final time that's longer than what I should be able to do. So this is why we want to have a lighter bike, or and we want to carry less weight with us, less water, for example. So let's go in the other direction and let's drop some weight. Maybe I buy a better frame, or maybe I start eating a little bit less and lose a little bit of weight. Now I've gained 2 minutes over this course, 2.5 minutes over this course, simply by losing weight. This course is historically, or is very well known for the climbs that it has. So slope resistance force is a big deal during this course. So the lighter that we can be during the race, probably the better. To some extent, we can't lose too much weight because then we get into an unhealthy region. All right, but now I can model what happens if I lose a couple of pounds, or maybe I shed a couple of pounds off my frame by carrying maybe one less water bottle. All right, last one here that you can model is CRR. That's the coefficient of rolling resistance. This is what we've talked about in class. Maybe I buy a better set of tires, or maybe I change my tire pressure to be more optimal, and I change that a bit. Maybe I change it by 3%. Oh, look at that. Another 2.5 minutes just by having a better set of tires, or maybe finding the right tire pressure. Changing tire pressure, that doesn't cost me a thing. And maybe I can actually improve my time by 2.5 minutes simply by paying attention to what pressure I put into the tire. So now if we start combining those things, this is where it becomes really neat. Well, maybe I drop a couple of pounds or a few pounds. Maybe I increase my training, my fitness. I'm able to go a little bit harder on power, and maybe I get a better bike fit. And you can see that this time starts to adjust, but it's not necessarily accumulating each one. Oh, that's my adjusted time is 2:29. I was looking at the wrong thing earlier. This is 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes total gain, just by taking, or by doing a little bit different drag, a little better power, losing a little bit of weight, having a little better coefficient rolling resistance. So now I need to go back. Now that I see I messed up there in my explanation, let's look at rolling resistance by itself. I was looking at the total time versus the time saved when I changed that rolling resistance. There's 0. This is 0 weight. And this is actually a lot of fun. And if I've got a race coming up, I'll actually download the data that this program has for that course, and then I can start simulating what type of time I would do based upon my power that I know I can generate for the race, or the equipment I'm using for the race. Okay, coefficient roller, oh, that was only 21 seconds. I said 2.5 minutes. So a change in coefficient of rolling resistance saved me just 21 seconds. But again, that doesn't cost anything to change the pressure of the tire. And if I change that a little bit more, that total gain starts to change. All right, so now let me go back here, because I was reading some of the numbers wrong. I kept looking at the total time. Looking for a reset button. It's not there. If I dropped weight here, I'm saving a minute, almost 2 minutes, by dropping weight and so forth. So I was focused on the wrong time here, but this is the total gain over that course for that change. Anyway, so you can get the sense of what's actually happening here is by manipulating these parameters, I'm able to assess the amount of gain that I'm able to get by that change, and then how it impacts my adjusted time. Okay, so real powerful program. Here's the original, here's the adjusted, and you can start looking at each parameter individually, and then you can also create a power plan for the course where you start to target a particular power level based upon where you are in the course. Okay, so that's best bike splits. So that is application in terms of software. And these are different routines. I'm going to show you a video also of someone using Zwift, and hopefully this is helpful so you can see how biomechanics knowledge actually helps the endurance athlete. Okay, thanks everybody.